CEO took her silent daughter to a cafe, froze when a single dad used sign language. The rain had been falling since morning, turning the city streets into shimmering rivers of light. Inside one of the busiest cafes downtown, people chatted, laughed, and typed away on their laptops. At a corner table sat Victoria Hayes, the CEO of a billion-dollar technology company. To most people, Victoria seemed to have everything: wealth, success, influence, and respect. Yet behind her confident appearance was a loneliness she rarely admitted. Across from her sat her 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was beautiful, bright, and kind. She was also deaf. Victoria loved her daughter more than anything in the world, but ever since Lily's father had passed away 3 years earlier, life had become complicated. Running a company demanded endless hours, meetings, and travel. Too often, Lily spent her afternoons with caregivers instead of her mother. That Saturday, Victoria had cancelled all appointments. For once, she wanted a simple day with her daughter. Lily smiled as she drew pictures in a notebook while Victoria answered a few final emails. "I'm done," Victoria signed. Lily grinned. "Promise." Victoria laughed and signed back. "Promise." The girl immediately pushed the notebook aside and began telling a story using sign language. Victoria watched her hands dance through the air. She wished she could freeze moments like this forever. Then something unexpected happened. A little boy entered the cafe holding a man's hand. The boy looked about 7 years old. The man appeared to be in his mid-30s, wearing simple jeans and a dark sweater. Nothing about him suggested wealth or status. He looked like an ordinary father. As they passed Victoria's table, Lily suddenly stopped signing. Her eyes widened. The little boy noticed her staring. Then he smiled and signed. "Hello." Lily gasped. Her face lit up instantly. Without hesitation, she signed back. The two children began communicating effortlessly. Victoria blinked in surprise. It was rare for Lily to meet another child who knew sign language. The man noticed and smiled warmly. "Sorry," he said. "My son gets excited whenever he meets someone who signs." Victoria smiled politely. "It's okay." The man signed something to his son. The boy laughed. Then Lily laughed too. Within seconds, they seemed like old friends. Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her daughter connect with someone so quickly. The man extended a hand. "Daniel Brooks." "Victoria Hayes." His eyes widened slightly. "The Victoria Hayes." She nodded. Daniel chuckled. "Well, now I'm nervous." She laughed. "Most people are." The tension disappeared immediately. Daniel and his son sat at a nearby table. But the children kept signing back and forth. Soon they were sharing drawings and jokes. Victoria couldn't stop watching. Lily looked happier than she had in months. Eventually Daniel noticed. "Your daughter has a beautiful smile." Victoria's expression softened. "Thank you. She reminds me of my son." Victoria glanced at the boy. "Is he deaf too?" Daniel nodded. "Since birth." Something in his voice caught her attention. Not sadness. Not frustration. Acceptance. Pride. Love. Victoria found herself asking questions. "How did you learn sign language so fluently?" Daniel smiled. "When Ethan was diagnosed, I decided communication would never be a barrier between us." Victoria felt strangely emotional. Daniel continued. "I spent 2 years learning everything I could." 2 years. Every evening after work, Victoria looked down. She remembered how difficult it had been balancing work and motherhood. Sometimes she relied on interpreters. Sometimes caregivers handled appointments. Sometimes guilt kept her awake at night. Daniel seemed to notice. "You're doing fine, you know." She looked up. "What?" "The way Lily looks at you." Victoria frowned. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "Children tell the truth with their eyes." Victoria glanced at Lily. The girl was watching her. Smiling, trusting, loving. Daniel wasn't wrong. Yet Victoria still felt inadequate. "Sometimes I think she deserves a better mother." Daniel's expression became serious. "Don't say that." She stared at him. "You don't know me." "No," he replied gently. "But I know what exhaustion looks like." For a moment neither spoke. Then Daniel added quietly. "My wife left when Ethan was 2. Victoria blinked. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. She couldn't accept the diagnosis. Victoria's heart sank. "That's terrible." It was. He looked toward his son. "But Ethan taught me something." "What?" "Love doesn't become harder because life becomes harder." Victoria felt those words settle deep inside her. The children eventually convinced them to sit together. One coffee turned into two. Then lunch. Then dessert. Hours passed. The conversation flowed effortlessly. Victoria learned Daniel worked as a school librarian. His income was modest. His apartment was small. His life was far simpler than hers. Yet he seemed genuinely happy. Something Victoria hadn't felt in years. When evening approached, the children protested. No. Lily signed dramatically. Ethan laughed. 5 more minutes. Daniel and Victoria exchanged amused looks. Eventually they agreed to meet again. The following weekend they visited a park. Then a museum. Then another cafe. Weeks became months. Lily and Ethan became inseparable. And surprisingly, so did their parents. For the first time since her husband's death, Victoria found herself looking forward to weekends. Daniel never cared about her money. Never asked about her company. Never treated her differently. He simply treated her like Victoria. Not a CEO. Not a public figure. Just a woman trying her best. One evening they sat on a bench while the children played nearby. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Daniel broke the silence. You know something? What? You're different than I expected. Victoria laughed. Good different or bad different? Good. He smiled. The news makes you sound terrifying. She laughed harder. I've heard that before. Daniel's eyes softened. You're actually kind. For some reason, those words affected her more than any business award ever had. Months later, disaster struck. Victoria's company faced a major crisis. A product failure triggered lawsuits. Stock prices collapsed. Reporters swarmed her office. Investors demanded answers. For weeks she barely slept. One evening she arrived home exhausted. Her shoulders slumped. Her eyes filled with tears. Lily immediately noticed. The girl hugged her tightly. Then handed her a drawing. It showed 4 people holding hands. Victoria, Lily, Daniel, Ethan. Above them was a simple sentence written in careful handwriting. Family is who stays. Victoria broke down crying. The next day she visited Daniel. He opened the door and instantly knew something was wrong. Without asking questions, he simply hugged her. For the first time in years, Victoria allowed herself to lean on someone. Not employees. Not lawyers. Not advisors. Someone who genuinely cared. Over the next months Daniel supported her through every challenge. The company eventually recovered. The crisis passed. But something else had changed. Victoria realized she no longer feared the future. Because she wasn't facing it alone. One snowy December evening, nearly 2 years after their first cafe meeting, Daniel invited Victoria and Lily to the same cafe where they had first met. The owner had decorated everything with Christmas lights. The children sat nearby, drinking hot chocolate. Victoria smiled. This place started everything. Daniel nodded. It did. He seemed nervous. Very nervous. Victoria raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Daniel laughed awkwardly. I've practiced this speech 100 times. Her heart skipped. What speech? Daniel reached into his pocket. Then he knelt beside the table. Victoria froze. Across the room, Lily and Ethan immediately noticed. Their eyes widened. Daniel looked up at her. 2 years ago, my son met your daughter. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. And because of that, I met you. Several people in the cafe began watching. Daniel continued. You taught me that strength and kindness can exist together. His voice trembled. You showed me that success means nothing without people to share it with. Victoria covered her mouth. Daniel opened a small box. Inside was a ring. Victoria Hayes. His eyes glistened. Will you marry me? The entire cafe became silent. Victoria looked toward Lily. The little girl was crying. Smiling. Signing repeatedly. Say yes. Ethan joined in. Say yes. Victoria laughed through tears. Then she looked back at Daniel. The man who never cared about her title. The man who loved her daughter. The man who had quietly healed a broken family. Yes, she whispered. The cafe erupted in applause. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger. Lily and Ethan ran forward and wrapped their arms around both of them. For a moment, nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The children began signing excitedly. Daniel signed back. Victoria joined them. 4 pairs of hands moved together beneath the warm Christmas lights. Years later, people would ask Victoria what the greatest decision of her life had been. They expected answers about business acquisitions, investments, or company milestones. Instead, she always smiled and said, It happened in a cafe. Because on a rainy afternoon when she simply wanted coffee with her daughter, she discovered something worth more than every dollar she had ever earned. A family. And it all began with a single word spoken through sign language. Hello. The smallest greeting had changed 4 lives forever.